Hello again everyone, Mary Rose from Stitch Bliss Corner here, and it's the 24th of June 2018. I just thought I'd come back and do a little update on where I am with my stitching, and I wanted to also give a shout out to someone. Now her name is Elizabeth Martinez, and she's also Fanta Stitches all in one, but I'll list that below, give the link below. Now I don't do many shout outs, but this person, I think she's particularly courageous because she has a very interesting story. She was a professional musician. She got a degree from one university and a master's degree in music from another university. And she went on to work in orchestras and everything. And so music has been a big passion of hers. And she found that she was getting some deafness in one of her ears. And it turned out that she had a tumour on the oral nerve, and she had to have brain surgery for that. And when she underwent her surgery, she suffered a slight stroke, which she's still got a little bit of evidence of it in her face, as she mentions, one side of her face. The mouth is a little bit misaligned with the other side. And she has trouble with her mobility. But she seems to be the sort of person that makes the most of all that comes and the least of all that goes. She'd learnt cross-stitching from one of her sisters, and she had been stitching on and off for 30 years. But of course music would have taken up most of her time. But when she found that she had a disability, she had to come back from the brain surgery. She had to learn to walk again and do so many things. And she found that her dexterity in her fingers, one hand anyway, wasn't as good but as it was before, but she found she could still do some stitching. So she has been picking up pieces and doing work on those for relatives, and a lot of the things that she stitches she gives to them. But she stitched a lovely elephant for herself, which is beautifully done. And and she's doing a little bit of designing as well now, and she seems to have a flair for that. So I just thought I would mention her. She now lives with her parents and her sister and I think a nephew, and they've recently moved to a house where they're all settling in. And so I wish her all the best for her stitching and her new residence, and I hope everything goes well for her. So keep up the good work, Elizabeth. I think you're an amazing person. You certainly have a lot of courage and endurance, and I admire you very much for that. So happy stitching to you. Now, speaking of happiness, I just would like to mention Cindy of Cindy's Cross Stitch. She sent me some fabulous pictures of her sunflowers, which they're very tall. And Harlequin was having a look at these pictures, and I think Cindy could be a professional photographer because she does beautiful pictures. Anyway, it reminded us both of some sunflowers that we had one year here when the children were small, and a few of them grew quite tall with a big sun face and everything, and they've got those little seeds in the middle. Anyway, I heard a real cacophony going on out there one day, and it was a whole lot of cockatoos. They're cockatoos, they make a real screechy noise. They're very noisy birds. They're like like the vandals of the bird world. You know, they should have leather jackets on with all chains hanging off, I think. So, you know, you get out of there. If you're a bird, anyway, you get out of the way of cockatoos because they're really quite fierce in many ways. Anyhow, imagine my surprise when I looked out there and I saw some cockatoos actually on the sunflower, holding onto the stalk and pecking at the seeds that were in the face of the sunflower. And they actually snapped them off. So, you know, the whole thing just snapped because of the weight of these birds, which I wasn't happy about because they were very nice sunflowers and I haven't got a green thumb, so I was quite proud of the fact that I'd actually grown something for once. Anyway, that's the cockatoo story, just for you, Cindy. Anyway, so what else have I got to tell you today? Oh yes, now I thought I would just update you now on beach babies and dragons of Sumatra. Ingeborg was asking about the colour choices that I have for dragons, and I'll show you where I'm up to with that. And also, I'm going to show you some of the colours that I have now ready for Heaven on Earth and the early stages of getting that underway. So I shall do beach babies first and then move on to the other things. So here is the Enchanting Dimensions piece, Beach Babies, and I'm stitching that on 16 count Ada. I'll just take my ring off. I was stitching on that last night. I'm going to try and get some of these smaller pieces done at the same time as I'm doing Heaven on Earth, because I don't think Heaven on Earth, I'll show you a picture of that so that anyone who hasn't seen my video before will know what it looks like. That's Heaven on Earth, which I will get to that shortly. Although I really love that piece, I don't think anything will be quite as all-encompassing of my attention as Scout was. So I feel that I'll be able to stitch a larger piece and stitch other pieces at the same time without feeling that urge to get back stitching the larger piece again quickly, you know, because I think Scout just completely took over everything. So I don't think that will happen in this case. Anyway, so back to beach babies here. So I'm just now working down, I've done the umbrellas in the background, and here I've extended across here, that the end of the pattern was here, but I put another couple in there, palings in there, because the frame that I picked for this was a bit wider than the actual chart. But now I'm thinking that I probably won't use that chart anyway, so who knows, it might end up covering up what I've stitched, I don't know. The greatest plans of mice and men sometimes come unstuck. So we'll see how we go anyway. And the actual pattern here, if you can see there, it's just plain Ada in between the stitching, which works quite well, I think. But I do like my full coverage, so I'm doing 1/1 in those areas where it would just be plain Ada, and I'm covering it up in a lighter colour there. Just because I like full coverage, I guess. So anyway, that's where I'm up to with beach babies, and I intend on working on that on and off just to get it finished up. Now we can go on to Dragons of Sumatra, which I've decided to throw caution to the wind and do my own colours for this piece. Now, I'm just doing basically the colours of the rainbow, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and it's in no particular order. So when I was thinking about starting this piece, I just got my pencils out and just did a sort of a palette. This is on a piece of paper, so that I could move around things and just think about the colours I was going to use. And I think that's always fun if you can just get your coloured pencils out, and if you're thinking of doing something differently to how it's charted, because this one, of course, the idea, and it's a good idea too, is to use a nice fabric, a hand-dyed fabric of some sort, and then use variegated thread, and I think that works very well. I think it's very nice, but in my case I decided to not do that. I mean, I might stitch this again and do that, who knows? I mean, you just don't know, do you? So here is my piece. As you can see, I decided to do it on black anyway, which made it different in the first place. And this is where I'm up to. Now, it's amazing how when you do a different colour or a different set of colours, how it can look so different to the initial one. I mean, it bears little resemblance, really. Now, all of these colours that I have here are all subject to change. So if I find that when I've finished something just doesn't go, I will be quite happy to unpick it. So, but I'm enjoying this enormously. And this tree here, which, oh, sorry, this isn't working very well, this I've got here. That tree there, I really wasn't that keen on it, to be quite honest, because I think even on there I thought it looked a bit strange, but then the whole piece is a bit strange, really. And I changed a little bit here and there on the tree, just with the stitching is slightly different in the patterning. So anyway, there are two different colours, as you can see in there, and that little section there I changed, I think. Let me have a look. Yes, here see, that's what happens when you're changing as you go. Bear with me for a moment. Yes, that's it there. Just that one there, that little one. Right. I just made it more of like a trellis work. I'm not sure that result justified how long it took to shade it. But anyway, not to worry. So that's where I'm up to anyway. And I put a little bit of sparkly on there, a little bit of Krynic, and then yeah, so just so you can have a bit of So we'll just see where this takes us. I should imagine that I'll be able to get a little bit more done on that because, as I say, I am enjoying it very much. And we'll see how that progresses. So that was for you, Ingeborg, just a little bit more in depth. The colour palette, as I say, it's really just colours of the rainbow, and it's really as it comes to me. It's not, I mean, you could sit and draft it all out with coloured pencils if you wanted to. You know, you could just get some graph paper and do it that way so that you didn't have to stitch it and then pull it out if it didn't work. But I think these motifs are small enough that really you stitch it, and if it doesn't work you can pull it out. But I've been very lucky so far. I haven't had to pull anything out yet. But then it's still got quite a ways to go, so we'll have to see. Right, now on to my preparations for Heaven on Earth. This wonderful mystic stitch. And at the bottom, along the bottom, I intend to put these words: somewhere beyond right and wrong there is a garden. I will meet you there. And what a beautiful garden that is. Just to imagine sitting there on that little seat. How lovely. So I will be stitching it on 18 count Ada. Oh, by the way, sorry, just before I leave dragons, although I have left them, but I'm coming back to them. This is 1/1. And I'm quite happy with that coverage, especially on black. Right, now, I'm going to use 18 count Ada, and this is my very large piece that I just cut pieces off. So I've got quite a big piece of Ada there, and I will be using this. I like white for full coverage because it will bring out the true colours of whatever you're stitching. You know, if you've got white underneath, the colour is going to be quite true that you stitch onto it. So there's my Ada, so I've shown you that. Then here are some of the colours. Now you'll notice there are greens and things in there. That's because at the same time as we got these colours, I've got the Heaven on Earth, the Rise Above, you know, the other piece that I was thinking of stitching. I ordered those colours as well, ready for that, for a later occasion. So that's why. But as you can see, there are some lovely colours that are going to come up in this Heaven on Earth piece. So, gorgeous. So I'm starting to get a little bit on the excited side about starting that. Now, someone did ask me about my gridding, because whenever I'm doing a big project or getting ready to do one, I always make sure that I have my Ada, my 18 count Ada, because I don't think you can beat it for full coverage unless you are doing a piece that has faces that you want detail on, in which case 22 hardanger is really good because you can split it into quarters for the fine features on a face. So I'll use 22 like I'm using for the Harlequin piece. I'm using 22 for that. But if I'm ever doing anything full coverage, I think 18 count Ada is fabulous because it's just so, it has such endurance. It's a very durable fabric, and I think you need that above anything else if you're stitching a large piece, because every stitch that goes in there can weaken the fabric a little bit. I think as a whole, once it's all together, it's quite strong because the stitching sort of holds it all together really well. But at the same time, there's a lot of different forces in there, in the fabric. So if you've got a fabric that's very durable, well, it gives you the best chance of ending up with a long-lasting piece. Anyway, so that's what I do. I get my Ada ready. I always edge it, and I always use blanket stitch, and I always do that myself, hand stitch it. I never machine stitch my edges, serge my edges at all. It's all part of the ceremony. It's a bit like a Japanese tea ceremony as far as I'm concerned. You know, if you ever go to one of those, apparently, you know, the pot has to be, you know, treated in a certain way, and the tea has to be prepared a certain way, and they turn the cups and they do all sorts of things because it's like a ritual. And when I'm preparing a large piece, it's like a ritual, and so I have to do it the way I do it. So I have my Ada, and what I do is I always print out the pattern, the chart, and I stick it all together. Now this here is heaven on earth. I'll just fold it. So that's the whole chart. That's half of it, and then I've got the other half folded back here. So I have the whole piece, and then when I look at it, I see if there are any symbols that are similar to each other. And by that I mean, you know how sometimes with a chart you'll get symbols like that, where one is going, oh gosh, hang on a minute. Better. Where you get a line, one's facing one way and one's facing another. Well, I have always had trouble with that sort of thing. So I always colour in with a pencil the ones that face the other way, so that, or one particular way, to remind me that's not the one that faces the other way. I don't know why. I'm sure there's lots of people that have no problem whatsoever with that sort of thing, but I do. So if there are any symbols that I think might be confusing, I just colour them in on the chart so I can see them and I realise, oh yes, that's not that colour, it's the other colour. But I will get into that further once I've got all my colours on the cards and everything the way I do them. Now, excuse me, that brings me now to my gridding. And someone has asked me how I grid. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to, this is just a rough piece of 14 count Ada. I always, when I'm doing my gridding, I always get my middle bit first. So you find the centre. Then, when I've found the centre, I stitch a line across from one side to the other and from the top to the bottom with just white cotton. And I always have a cross in the middle. I make sure that it crosses in the middle, and that I know is my absolute centre stitch. Then I keep my centre. I do the same to my chart. Make sure that I've got my centre stitch and I mark it so I know that's my centre. Then with my gridding, I always start right in that centre where it's crossed over. So here, although I haven't got the cotton there, I'm just going to show you. So that there is my very centre of my piece of cloth. So I put my needle through, and I always use I usually use pale colours for my gridding thread, but I'm using red today so it shows up. So wait until I just get this stitch in. I always go 2 stitches up. I'll show you in a minute. Just hang on, I think this is naturally enough. It's decided to give me a bit of trouble. So just bear with me for a moment. Right, so, and so someone asked me about this, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this because I think it's a bit confusing. But anyway, so there are my, if you can see, there's marked 2 stitches there, and that's the very centre of the fabric. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, once I've got those 2 stitches marked, I count across for the 10. So I'll show you in a moment. Hang on. 4, 6. So there's the 2 stitches there, and they're 10 stitches apart, 2 stitches up. Okay, now the other side, there's a big piece of thread on the other side to go from the middle outwards on the other side. So if you just bear with me a moment, I'll just do the next 10, and then I might be able to show you better in a minute. Now, I'm not going right to the end, but I'll just show you what I do at the end. Right, now, so there's my gridding line from the centre out to the edge. Now this, naturally enough, would be way out here somewhere because it's a massive piece, so you would go more to, this is just to try and show you how I do my gridding. So, and then I have a little line I put there. It's just a stitch out and in, just to show that that is the bottom of my grid box. This will be clearer once I do the other side. So now I'm just going to do out from the other side, because what I do, of course, in the middle, I have the other strand of thread, because I have to go from the middle outwards on this side. So when you start off in that middle part, you have a long piece of thread that you take to the other side as well. So I shall just do that, and then I'll just show you the next row, and hopefully it will all make sense. So that's that side. So I'll just go out the other way. And as everybody who has ever watched any of my videos know, I think gridding is essential if you don't want to be frogging. because even a small piece needs frogging, needs gridding, as far as I'm concerned, because smaller pieces can be extremely intricate, especially with patterns and things, and it must be infuriating to think you've got your pattern right and find you're a stitch out. And I think, oh, if only that person had gridded, they would have noticed within 4 or 5 stitches they were going wrong, because your eye can play tricks on you. It looks right, but then the mathematics of it ends up you're wrong. It's very frustrating. I'll just do a few more of these. I'm just counting it to the end. And of course you can go wrong with gridding anyway. That's why my first lot I make sure I count carefully. But see, once you've done a couple of rows and they're correct, you don't have to count. You just line it up with the original gridding line, and you know, it's quite easy really. Right, so when I get to the end, I'm going to show you here. I've come to the end of my gridding line here, and what I do, I just put the needle in, then I bring it out there, and then I put it back in there to make that little angle there, and that tells me that that is the bottom of my grid line. Okay, so I've got it on both sides like that, you see. Then the next line, because of course that's the crucial line, you have to make sure your numbers are correct with your 10 stitches. And then you have to go and make sure vertically, because you've got your horizontal 10 stitches between, and now you've got to make sure that you're doing your vertical. So what I do is I use a different colour, and usually, as I say, it's a pale blue and a pale mauve or something like that, or sometimes I use all the same colour. It depends on the mood I'm in. But I just find that for some reason, maybe it's because it breaks up the monotony of gridding by using a different colour every alternate one, you know. Anyway, so we've got our corner here, our corner stitch, right? And now we have to count our 10 stitches. So there you go, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So your 10th one is going to be up here. So let me just stitch that in and it'll be clearer in a minute. I hope it will be anyway. See, in here, where I'm doing my corner stitch, because now we can start from the edge, you see, we don't have to start from the middle because we've already done our middle. So I do my corner stitch like that. I mean, you don't have to really do a corner stitch, it's just that I like to do it because it's a fail-safe way of knowing that my top is up here, because that's the bottom of my 10 stitches. So it's just another way of knowing that my top of my work is up here. So anyway, I'll just do this. And once again, see, once you've got your original grid line, as you can see, it's a lot easier to put your next one in, because you're just aligning yourself with this one. So there we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So that's your 10 stitches. And as long as you remember that these 2 are the start of your next set of 10, it works better for me than just having 1 stitch and 9. I'm better working in 2s. So that's why I think my gridding is slightly different to other people, because I do 2 stitches instead of 1 stitch to mark my grid, because I found for some reason it was much easier for me to have 2 stitches for my marking, and then it was just 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So this bottom one here is the first 2 of the next 10. So the bottom there is 10, from there to there is 10 stitches, and from those 2 stitches up, when I get to there, that'll be another 10, and so on. So that's how I do my gridding. I don't know. See, and the thing is, you can pretty much put your needle in then straight across to the next grid line, because you've marked it there, and you know that that's correct, and you put the needle in there, and then once you've put the needle in there, then it's very easy to go across to the next one, and so on. So that's how I do my gridding. And because there's that little angle there, you know that that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So it just goes in 2s, my count, instead of single gridding. And you can pretty much tell straight away if you go wrong with your gridding as well. You can see that it's not right. So I'll just go to the end here and just show you again. As I say, when you put your needle in there, you can just keep your, oh, gee, this is hard to explain. I'll just do it that way. See, I put my needle in there, and then I slid it across to the next one. I mean, how easy is that? And it's quite enjoyable, really. But it takes me, at least a day to get my gridding in. But it saves me so much effort later on, and it saves so much frogging. Swim a needle gone. There. Now hang on, have I got that? Yeah, now see here. See where the needle's coming through there? You can see straight away it's not in the right place because it goes down to there. So all you have to do, of course, is to go out and come in the right place. So that is the Mary Rose gridding style. And of course I always mark my top, even if I've got all my little angle stitches showing me that that's the bottom and I'm going up. I still do my mark my top. So I hope that that wasn't too confusing. I mean, if you find that it's doesn't make any sense to you, I could try it again. I'm experimenting with a little bit of the overhead camera business, but I really don't like doing it because I feel as though it's a little bit too far away from what I'm doing, or something's not quite right. But I am trying because I would like to show how I couch beach babies. And I thought, well, maybe I could put something together for that. I don't know. If it doesn't work, I won't be doing it. Because I'm not that keen on Stitch With Me's either, to be quite honest, because I do like to see the person speaking. You know, I think it's just the way I am. I'm not... I mean, I do watch some of them, but I tend not to watch them or listen to them. But I don't really know why, because when you think about it, you are just stitching when someone's on and talking to you face to camera. But I think there's just something in me that I don't like a voice coming from somewhere. I can't see them. I must be just a little quirk of mine. Anyway, whatever. We're all different, aren't we? Thank goodness. So, as I say, I just thought I would just bring you up to date. I'm hoping that I will be ready and raring to go in a couple of weeks with my Heaven on Earth. I won't start it without you. And in the meantime, I'm going to try and get a bit more done on the other pieces before I start the big one. I wish everybody well with their stitching. I thank everyone for their lovely comments that they send me, for taking the time to do that, for their caring and their sharing, for the well wishes from my recent surgery that seems to be going pretty well now. It all seems to be healing up well, and the pathology was fine, so that was, you know, just as they expected. And I just wish everyone well. StitchCon this weekend, so I hope everything goes well for them. They must all be in a state of high fever of excitement, and there'll be plenty of videos going up covering that event, I'm sure. And until next time, all the best from Mary Rose. Bye for now.